This is the AI Music Revolution, brought to you by JG BeatsLab. JG BeatsLab is a methodology company for serious musicians working with AI tools. Not tips, not hacks, a complete system for getting consistent professional output from platforms like Suno and Murica. We call it the unlocked system. The framing is simple. You can be a vending machine operator, pressing buttons and accepting whatever the AI gives you back, or you can be a director, understanding the platforms well enough to get exactly what you want from them. Lane's who work, human-authored, AI-assisted music creation. That's what this show is built on. Here's today's episode. Welcome back to the AI Music Revolution. I am Josh Gilliland, the founder of JG BeatsLab. This week, I had the privilege of sitting down with Bob Sluys. He's a musician who has been at it since the mid-'70s. He's been on the road. He's a trumpet player, bass player. He played the tuba at Magic Mountain, don't ask. He toured with Roy Clark. He played funk up and down the West Coast. Spent a decade in LA chasing a record deal, and ended up in Vegas as a musical director on the Strip. Bob came to AI music the same way a lot of you did, kicking and scratching against it. His words, not mine. And then he got on what he called the Suno crack pipe. What he said about Red Lab Access, completely unprompted, by the way, it stopped me in my tracks. And what he said about mastering is going to make a lot of you feel seen. This is the first episode of Red Lab Conversations. Real members, real stories, real music. Here's Bob. Can you tell us a little bit about your backstory, your music backstory, the musical journey that you've been on that has brought you to this point?
Yeah, it's kind of unusual. I was born in Holland back in the 1900s, way back last century. And we moved to America when I was 4 years old. And my dad was a pastry chef in the old country, but he also was a weekend hobbyist accordion player, because in Holland, everyone plays soccer and everyone plays accordion. And so I grew up listening to him play his accordion and just sort of laying on the carpet and just, with my coloring book, and he'd be playing whatever, standards and old waltzes and polkas and stuff. And then, fourth grade comes along and school band. And so I picked up the trumpet. And all the way up through junior high and high, and I became, I was the man, kind of. I took it serious, and I learned all the Herb Alpert songs, in fact, from the '60s, and I did all that stuff. And then right out of high school, back in '74, long story short, I ended up getting a call to audition for a production company that booked Roy Clark of Hee Haw fame, picking and picking. Yeah, and so I went on the road with him for about a year. He had a little two-piece horn section. And we toured around playing, county fairs and TV shows at casinos, whatever. And I dropped out of that, went back to college for a year, just played in the jazz band. Then I went on the road. I was in Seattle at the time and went up and down the coast during the mid to late 70s playing trumpet in various funk bands, back in those days, Tower of Power, Blood, Sweat and Tears, Chicago, sure. All the disco stuff as well. And then the music biz kind of shifted in the late 70s, new wave, Devo, the Cars, all those groups came out, and horn sections was too expensive, so you could get a 5-piece band instead of an 8-piece band. So out of necessity, I learned bass like overnight, just because it seemed the easiest instrument to pick up. You didn't have to schlep drums around, or I knew keyboards because I knew theory. I was a trained musician, which sort of plays into the AI angle down my story, as you'll hear in a second. So anyway, I moved to LA. I got a job playing tuba in a Dixieland band at the main gate at Magic Mountain. Don't ask me, I'd never played tuba before, but I'm the kind of guy, I just jump in and I'll make you think I know what I'm doing, even though I probably don't. And so I spent 10 years in LA playing bass. I had a couple projects, you're in 10 different spec bands at the same time, all hoping to get signed to a record deal. Remember those records? So I played in a couple good bands. Excuse me. I played bass, and I had a home production, an 8-track reel-to-reel. And then, MIDI came along, and we were all rebelling against that. Drum machines were going to replace drummers, and not realizing at the time initially that they were simply tools. They were tools that we still had to have that human part of it, and no one's going to go watch a band with a drum machine unless you're Depeche Mode. But anyway, so in 1990, I moved back to Seattle. I got a job. I helped create a program that was a school of rock years before the Jack Black or whichever Jack movie, right? I was teaching kids how to go out and, like be in a wedding band and that kind of thing. And then I moved to Vegas in 2001. I was a musical director, bass player for a headliner on the Strip. And he was an Elton John impersonator. And we did shtick and just kind of a variety type show. And then I had a project with my girlfriend, and it was very competitive, never really got anywhere. So really, I've had a very varied and diverse trip through the halls of music here over the past 60 years or so. Anyway, get to the AI component. Many years ago, I did a demo for a young girl, and she was a precocious songwriter, 10, 11 years old. And anyway, I stayed in touch with her, and she ended up marrying a guy that had written Paula Abdul's hit song Straight Up. His name is Elliot Wolf. He also wrote Cold Hearted Snake. So he was a very established, prominent songwriter, had many hits. And they got married. They lived in Santa Fe. Well, about 10 years ago, he passed away. And so now she's sitting on this huge catalog of songs that he had written that had never seen the light of day, and she reached out to me and said, "Hey man, I'm sort of grieving and and I don't know what to do. And I'm her Uncle Bob. And, can you help me get these things figured out?" And so over a process of some years, I did that. I liquidated his studio and then recently, a few months ago, finally, after all these years, she reached out and said, "Okay, I'm ready to move forward and let's see what we can do with these songs." And some of them were from the late 80s, 90s, whatever. They were well recorded. They were masters. They were ready to be released. But, they were 30, 35 years old. Mm-hmm. And one day she calls me up all excited. She's on this thing called Suno. I thought those were Japanese guys wearing diapers, rolling around on that wasn't funny, but I couldn't wait to use that one. But anyway, so Suno. And so I got on the Suno crack pipe just instantly. And she was taking some of Elliot's songs and running them through Suno. And so I went ahead and ordered the Suno thing as well. And I was, for the last couple of years, was just kicking, scratching, clawing, anything against AI. I thought it was going to destroy mankind, and especially for music, that some kid could just sit there and type in some words, and 2 minutes later they got a hit song, and which actually has happened on Spotify and some of those places, as I understand it, that, there's some of that out there. So that's sort of how I got into the AI thing. And when she turned me on to Suno, I bought it. And within minutes, your JG Labs ad started coming through my feed.
Perfect. Good.
So nice job there in your marketing effort. And so, of course, everyone that's listening, the smartest thing I did since getting Suno was to subscribe to Red Lab and Access and get all this wealth of information that I'm sucking up to Josh right now. But it's incredible information. And I am now, overnight, am a proponent of AI because I recognize it, just as I did with drum machines and synthesizers, as a tool that there's still the human component. And that's my take on it. And there's my history.
Quick break in the episode. If what you're hearing today is connecting with you, the place to start is the minimum starter kit. 3 books, $27. Make it, release it, promote it. The first book is Unlock Suno, the complete guide. This is the methodology for getting consistent, professional output from Suno. The Suno stack mental mode, persona work, style box weighting, the director's cut workflow. The second book is Unlock Music Rights and Registration. Royalty collection, copyright protection, ASCAP, MLC, Sound Exchange, DistroKid, and the disclosure landscape we're now operating in. Everything you need to actually get paid for the music you're releasing. The third book is Unlock Music Promotion, how to get heard once your music is out there. Playlist pitching, audience building, the platforms that move the needle and the ones that don't. Make it, release it, promote it. $27 at jgbeatslab.com/store. back to the episode. I love your story. You know, you've been around music and making music for decades, and to come to the realization that AI is a tool. If you were to talk to your peers in the music space who took, similar journeys to you, I'm assuming you'd get probably a bit of pushback about how, AI is cheating. But I'm glad that you were able to make that leap, and come over to the dark side.
It's funny you use that term because that's exactly how I described it when I did reach out I've got a good friend whose uncles were Montgomery and West Montgomery, two of the early 50s. One of them was the first one to ever play a Fender P-Bass on a recording, and West Montgomery might have been one of the finest jazz guitar players of all time. And he's about my age, and I told him, I said, "Hey, man, I went over to the dark side," and you know how I look at it, Josh. Partly is not as much of a creative tool per se, because the way I'm using it, I have yet to do a song where I'm just typing in prompts. Okay, I am taking existing songs that were human driven by excellent songwriters, and I'm getting a $10,000 master quality demo. In 2 minutes, right? So I feel bad for someone who's running their little home demo studio on their laptop and charging $50 a song like I used to do. I did that for years in LA. I do demos for people, it'd take me a whole day. I'd lay down some bass and punch in a drum beat and do the vote, and then here's my $100 and there's your demo. And you're never going to get a record deal because no one's going to listen to your cassette, that kind of thing.
Yes, exactly.
But now, with all the platforms that are out there, and so I think anyone that's listening to this, if they're either using it already or considering it, it's a fantastic tool. And we're training it how to get better. It's basically stealing our content and using that to even improve the quality of the AI machines.
People who are taking artistic visions and feeding that into the tool, to me, that's superpower. The thought that these tools like Suno, are simply prompts and easy buttons and royalty checks. I mean, that's just not the reality of how we are using the tool.
Let me jump in and comment on that, if I may. I've only had it for 5, 6, 7 weeks, whatever it's been, not even that, whatever. I have yet to scratch the surface. The sliders and the this and I haven't even touched that stuff.
Yeah.
Here's something I did that was kind of cool. You know how typically in music or mixing or mastering or whatever, we always A/B, right? We we compare the two, blah blah. So here's what I did, and it kind of pissed off my partner on this project I'm doing right now, because he's kind of prolific. He's got his phone, he's got a keyboard and his voice. And he'll sit down and he'll have written his lyrics, so he'll have written a new song, and not one from 30 years ago, just boom, here's a new song. And he'll sing it, and his singing's decent, but it's certainly not in tune. And the phone's laying on top of the piano, and you can hear the cars driving by, the neighbor's dog is barking, right? Yeah. And so you feed it in, and it comes out sounding like Queen's album, And so here's what I've done on a couple songs. And he said, you can't show this to anybody, and which I haven't, as a courtesy to him. But I will load his original demo, his MP3 from his voice recording off his phone. I'll put that into my GarageBand, and then I'll also put in the final Suno version, and I'll let him go for the first intro and the going into the first chorus, and then I'll morph it.
Oh, that sounds
crossfade, right? For a few measures, whatever, as it now, goes from black and white to color kind of thing.
Yep.
And so it's like one-stop shopping of the comparison of, the, as it, morphs into this, version. And I think it's really cool just to, if nothing else, to show what you get.
What do you think the biggest mindset shift was that you had to make coming into the world of AI music from the world of traditional music?
I'm not sure I completely understand and embrace what's coming down the road. I'm concerned about that more so than playing around with music right now. Look, if I were 18, 19, 20, back in my LA days, I'd have a whole, but I'm an old man. So I kind of fear a little bit for future generations, not only for the music component, which we still have to be creative. Okay. So it's not destroying creativity. That was my main concern. I don't think I've fully experienced the power of what it can do and what it's going to do. But I think as far as society, and I don't even know if I'm answering your question.
No, you are.
Job-wise, and again, this has nothing to do with your field and my experience with the Suno and AI and all that. But it is a rabbit hole, and sometimes rabbit holes, there could be a snake in one. That's a bad analogy, but I don't know. I did recently see the article about this guy that had like 2,000 Suno songs, completely based on prompts, and then he posted them and had robots go on Spotify and stream them. Yeah. And he made like $8 million, and now he's in prison because abusing the privilege, if it were. And is this a privilege for? Well, in a way, it is. To be able to have something that I couldn't have imagined. I was talking with someone last night about this. She goes, 20 years ago, I couldn't have imagined having, because she did I got her into the Suno thing. I probably led 3 or 4 people into the dark side, just so
nice.
you know. Yeah. So, that's my bad. But I said 20 years, I couldn't imagine being able to do this 3 years ago. What are you talking, 20 years? Are you kidding? No, it's so exponential, I think, and that's always something to fear because it gets ahead of the curve. And then even right now, to be honest, your books and guides are great. I've pretty much read everything in the Red Lab, and I got to go back and review. But I'm not going to lie to you. There's times where I'm overwhelmed, like, oh, geez, now I got to learn how to use this, mastering VU meter. And not that I don't know what those do, but okay, what's how many loofs or luffs or whatever those are?
I know.
Do I go minus 11.3, or now the red line's going off over here, and and that's when I go lay down and take a nap.
There's a big gap that needs to be filled in the mastering space of really teaching people how to correctly master these tracks, especially AI generated tracks. It's something that I really feel we need to keep filling and illuminating best practices and how-tos and training and whatnot.
So you can say, well, here's what you need to do. Great. Now how do I do it?
That's right.
And that's the part that I think is daunting and overwhelming because it could be done differently for different applications or different styles, genre, on and on and on. Yeah, mastering is pretty much a certain way. But if you don't have the knowledge of the workstation you're working with and some other things and plugins you got to get and how to chain them and on and what EQ settings, and because they're different, that's daunting. And for me, all that kind of stuff takes away from the creative process.
That's right.
In music, the only thing I'm a bass player. That's my main thing. But I do it. But the point is when I listen to a song and learning a new song, I never listen to the bass part first. I listen to the song.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
The melody, and I get a feel for the chord structure. I cannot walk down the street or have the radio radio. By the way, do you still own a radio?
What is this thing you speak of?
Yes, exactly. What do you? Good one. I cannot turn my brain off. I instantly write a chord chart in my head of anything I'm listening to. I can't stop it. And so I'm analyzing, but that's over 40, 50 years of experience doing that. And so I can transcribe in real time. And now that doesn't mean I've learned the bass line in real time, but I'm absorbing the song. And that's what, going back to the Elliot Wolf content, which is kind of on hold right now, but the guy was a great songsmith. And that's what it's all about more than anything. And that's the thing that I'm not sure AI or Suno they're not at that point yet. You know, that's my, I could be wrong, but
I agree.
You know, and that's what touches people. You see those polls coming through your feed, greatest guitarists of all time, and there's someone there that you go, wait a minute, she can only play 3 chords in a 2-chord song. Wait a minute, what do you know? It's so subjective, and you can't quantify that, but you can quantify great songs. You know, I went to a Billy Joel show a couple years ago, 3 hours long, and he hadn't done his encore yet. He left the stage, and I said to my friend, he better do an encore. And she goes, why is that? I go, well, he hasn't played We Didn't Start the Fire. He's still rock and roll today. Yeah. His biggest hits, he hadn't even played yet.
That's so funny.
And he had done 3 hours of great material.
Yeah.
You know? And that's why he's Billy Joel, you know. And
you touched on this earlier, and that's the creativity. I think as a species, if we were to allow AI tools to drain us of creativity, that would be an awful outcome. And I don't think that will happen here. And I think that those of us who are establishing methodologies for using these tools to actually amplify our human creativity, I think we're the ones that win the future.
You know, I couldn't agree more. My only concern is the human condition, and man is inherently greedy and selfish. Not. I'm painting with a broad brush, right? But you know, if there's a shortcut to riches and fame, and I mean, look at the TikTok videos and people, influencers, and they're billionaires, and I'm thinking, well, they haven't influenced me. I don't even know what they're talking about, or singing, or dancing, or again, I sound like that guy, Get Off My Lawn, You Kids, you know, Clint Eastwood in that movie, Gran Torino, get off, you know, that I know that. I'm like, but it's kind of true, you know. If we have pure intentions, then all is good in the world. And then we got the guy there that had bots, you know, streaming his songs, and now he's in prison. Well, that's also good that he's in prison now, because that's going to mess it up for the ones that are genuinely trying to, you know, like I said, I use it as a tool for initial creativity, as opposed to, here, create this for me so I can upload it and make some money. I have no interest.
Bob, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. I know we just touched the surface here, and I know, especially of your backstory, I know that there's a lot of other great stories back there, so we will definitely have to have you back on at some point in the future. But I'll pause here and I'll kind of give you a moment to provide any type of closing thoughts that you may have, or closing words of wisdom.
This is something I need to follow my own advice, and that is this: be fearless. Just be fearless. Just go for it. Whatever you want to do, and enjoy the process, because that makes it more fun.
That was Bob Sluys, trumpet player who grew up listening to his dad play accordion in the living room, a bass player by necessity, and a tuba player at Magic Mountain by sheer confidence. And now he's a fully converted AI music creator, bringing decades of real musical knowledge to these tools. You know, what I loved most about Bob's story is that he didn't come to this easily. He was kicking and scratching against AI for years. And then he actually tried it. He actually used it. He actually brought his musical knowledge to it. And the output spoke for itself. And that's the whole argument in one person's journey. Bob, thank you for your time, your honesty, and for being the first guest on Red Lab Conversations. We will absolutely have you back. I know that there is a sting story in there somewhere, and I intend to get it out. If today's conversation resonated with you, if you're at the moment Bob described, where you're curious but maybe overwhelmed, where you know there's something here but you just don't know where to start, Red Lab Access is where that changes. Everything Bob mentioned, the books, the guides, the research, the community, One price, lifetime access, everything included now and into the future. jgbeatslab.com/red-lab-access. Links in the show notes. Red Lab Conversations drop every Tuesday when we have a great conversation worth sharing. AI Music Revolution drops every Friday. Subscribe so you don't miss either one. And Bob, be fearless. One more thing before you go. Every Thursday morning, I send out a newsletter, one email a week. It's where I share what I'm working on in the studio, the research running the lab, and the methodology I'm refining in real time. New books, new blueprints, new findings from the Red Lab protocol research. If that sounds useful, the sign up is right on the homepage at jgbeatslab.com. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next Friday.